Learning for me is entirely about behaviour change.
Organisations are changing, the world is changing, the demographics are changing, who we trade with is changing.
I think hiring for potential is like a bit of a misnomer or just an alternative way of saying hiring the right people.
These are all learning curves and insights that you take on board to try and think about what you implement in.
You know, I entered the world of work without any assumptions that there would be barriers because of my gender.
Hi, and welcome to the Women in Leadership podcast series brought to you by the Business Transformation Network. It's commonly acknowledged that diversity initiatives improve business outcomes, yet still in 2020, only 29% of senior leadership roles were held by women. This series looks at women in leadership, the more personal aspects of their professional experience, what businesses need to recognise and do today to create a more diverse tomorrow, and much more. As always, if you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe and leave a review, and all links from the conversation will be shared in the show notes on whichever app you listen to your podcasts on. Today with us, we have Dr Tracey Leghorn, who is the Chief HR and Health and Safety Officer at SUEZ UK. She will be talking us through her experience as a female leader, with many insights on her journey to where she is today. And we will also be looking at her experience working in a male-dominated environment. So let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you for your time today. Could you introduce yourself and what you do to our listeners, please?
Yes, thanks, Emma. I'm Tracey Leghorn. I'm the Chief HR and Health and Safety Officer at SUEZ Recycling and Recovery UK. And I'm responsible for HR, health and safety, facilities and crisis management. For those who haven't heard of SUEZ before, SUEZ Recycling and Recovery UK, we deliver innovative and environmentally responsible solutions to manage over 11 million tonnes of waste per year for our customers, whether they be in households, local authorities or industrial and commercial.
Amazing. So today we're going to talk around sort of the theme of women in leadership. So I'm going to go straight in with some of the bigger questions. So how did you get to where you are today, and was it a challenging journey?
Yeah, I think, when you sit back and reflect on it, you do sometimes have moments where you think to yourself, how did I do that? How did I do all that? How did I fit it all in to my life? Whether that was working, studying, raising my children. It was certainly, very, very busy times and in very, very demanding jobs. My career, it wasn't planned. I remember when I was quite young, my father saying to me that I just was drifting through life, without a purpose. And in some ways he was right at the time. But I think on reflection, I think I was just leaving my options open. And that has served me really well in my career. Very much, wanted to get out into life, see what's happening, learn from other people, establish what opportunities are there before, having this defined path and narrowing those choices too early on. So I actually think in some ways, that's played well for me. I don't think it'll play well for everybody, but I think that's worked well for me. Amazing.
And so as a female leader, what has been sort of the most significant barrier to your career?
That's a good question, that. I think my father, raised us, myself and my two sisters, in the view that we could be anything we wanted to be, provided we put the effort in, and didn't distinguish between myself and my sisters and my brother in that way. And I think, I entered the world of work without any assumptions that there would be barriers because of my gender. And I can't honestly say that I feel it has ever affected me achieving an opportunity or being accepted or feeling included, certainly until, more recently. And I think some of that, though, is about just being more generally aware of the situation. And I think as you become more aware of some of the barriers, it makes me very driven to help other women and ensure that there is equality of opportunity, irrespective of gender or indeed any other characteristic.
Absolutely, I would completely agree. And so this next question, there's quite a lot of discussion around it, but I know you've also done some work and conversations around this piece before. So how do you think the hybrid working environment will affect women's opportunities in the workplace?
I think I'd start by saying this provides a great opportunity for women. Some of the challenges for women are around, not geographically being able to work at different places, not being able to up sticks and move to live in another part of the country or another part of the world. Needing to get out of the office at a certain time of the night to pick up your children, etc. And that is something that's difficult to change if you want to work and have children. I think things are changing and men very much more want to be part of their children's lives, but perhaps it hasn't extended as far as it needs to at this particular point in time. And I think for me, I just have some concerns around the potential for home working and working remotely to become women's work in the way that part-time work was developed or became women's work several decades ago. And although when part-time working was created, we were told it was, to help emancipate women, help provide opportunities for women to work. The reality was that was in a very confined types of jobs that were lower paid than the male equivalent roles. And what we don't want to happen is for something similar to repeat itself now. Let's learn the lessons of the past, take the best from what we have now and use that to inform the future. I think there's several things that could create that challenge. It could be that roles start to be put together or defined by what needs to be done in the office and what needs to be done at home. And if that happens, then it's important that the roles and the activities that are undertaken in the office and those that are done at home, don't become a two-tier types of roles where those where there's more advancement, that there's more enrichment, there's more learning opportunities are those that happen in the workplace. And tasks that don't fall quite as much into that are done at home. I mean, there's no doubt that, during the pandemic, the research is there. Women have been disproportionately affected by COVID hugely. In a way that it could take years and years to recover from. And actually, when you look at even sort of other areas, when you think around Black and ethnic minority groups, they have been severely impacted as well by COVID. So let's have a look. Let's think about some figures there. So around 1 in 12 Black minority ethnic workers are now unemployed compared to 1 in 22 of white workers. So that's significant difference there, and that plays out into the gender sphere as well. So I think it's really important that we look as HR professionals and businesses to make sure that we address some of the issues. There's always big challenges that organisations need to look to address, and we need to look at the risks of those and actively mitigate them, not sit by complacent and just hope that everything turns out okay. Some of the things that might get lost from remote working is, the access to those informal networks, access to those critical assignments, that you learn about when you're in the work environment and you're talking about things, when you're having conversations before and after meetings, when you're not present for those informal conversations that actually sometimes lead to quite important decisions. on who does what and where and how. And, you know, so that I think is very important. The whole presenteeism, you know, we have to get past the point where actually it's about seeing people at work at all hours of the day and night is, you know, seen as really positive, as opposed to actually being results driven and basing people's performance on that. So there's quite a lot to look at, and that we just can't leave to chance.
Yeah, I would agree there. And there's almost a bit of a cultural piece there in the sort of the home life and the working life. There seems to be a bit more of a movement now, as you touched on, with people being more involved at home, which then potentially can allow for there to be more equality in the workplace. But how else can we minimise the effect and ensure that businesses offer equal opportunities in a hybrid environment?
I think it's important that we don't make assumptions, that we look at the data, that we look at the effect of remote working on the different levels within the organisation, and, you know, against the different characteristics and backgrounds of your workforce. And that will take some time because, you know, we need to look at that over the months and years ahead to see the true impact of that. But data is always key to revealing gaps. What I'm really keen to do is get us to a point where there aren't gaps in the first place. So we need to start acting now. We need to understand that remote working, in fact, you know, individual society doesn't live in a vacuum. We've got to take steps to address some of these challenges and some assumptions now about, you know, what the norms are with regards to parents and their roles. And, you know, I circle back to during the pandemic, despite the fact that both women and men have been working at home, the burden of childcare and homeschooling has still rested predominantly with women. And women are still doing more of the domestic work than their male counterparts. So that hasn't changed despite them both being in the home. And actually, there's some recent research that's saying that men without children and with children, and women without children who are remote working are actually putting in more hours working than had previously been the case, possibly because they're not traveling to work and they've got a little bit more time on their hands, and that might change, you know, as we come out of lockdown. But women with children are not undertaking more hours of work. And so you see the disproportionate effect there with regards to what's happening with people working at home. I'm not saying that applies to everybody at all, but, you know, this is some of the research and facts that are coming through. And I suppose then we've got to avoid the development of this sort of two-tier workforce, you know, with those that are in the office and those that choose to work remotely. So a lot of work needs to be done to educate managers about these new roles, about the culture that we need to create to make that one of equity. Because at the end of the day, the biggest catalyst for change is how managers go about managing their people, how they go about making everyday decisions.
Yeah, I would entirely agree there. And some of those stats as well that back it up are just mind-blowing. So on sort of a slightly different tangent now, what advice would you share with younger women entering a male-dominated profession or environment?
Another great question there, Emma. That's a good one. I mean, at the moment, I'm working in a male-dominated industry, 85% male. And I think, you know, it's interesting because I've often been to women's events or seen seminars where it's been advocated that we need to perhaps display more male traits to survive or thrive in predominant male environments. But I actually don't think that's the case. I think I'm very comfortable in my own skin I don't want to act more male. I want to be authentic. I want to be myself. And that's what I would encourage in other women. We bring something different to the table, and that goes to the heart of valuing diversity. It goes to the heart of being inclusive and having different views brought to the table that might change the direction of conversations. So be authentic, be yourself, trust that you've got something valuable to bring to conversations, to decisions, and to businesses. And, trust your instincts in that respect. I think, some people say, well, that won't work in the organisation I'm in. But what I would say is, if you've gone for an interview in an organisation and you've truly been yourself, not second-guessed what they wanted, etc., but being yourself and given honest answers in that respect, then that business, you've got that job because of what you're bringing and the views that you've had in that interview. You are the right person for the job. And so if that's the case, why start trying to be someone else after the event?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so I have sort of a couple more questions. So this one, what was one lesson that you learned in your career that has been fundamental to your development?
Oh, lesson. I think for me, if I had to go back to my 20-year-old self sort of thing, I'd say, take every opportunity to learn and grow. I do put quite a lot of weight by academic learning, by professional qualifications, and I know that's not a view supported by everybody, but it is very strongly my view. I think you can learn a lot more than just getting the qualification itself through that learning. It is life enriching. It teaches you skills around discipline, around dogmatic determination, around writing, being able to communicate really well. And beyond that, it gives you such great networks. I often don't encourage distance learning. I want people who are doing their CIPD qualifications to attend for those courses, because being in the room with other professionals and hearing what's happening in their organisation, and then taking those ideas and thinking how they may or may not work in your organisation is something that you just can't put a price on. So academic learning for me, I think, is important. You don't have to follow that direct route of, straight from college to university. You can be more dynamic than that now. And, as I say, I think face-to-face learning and that networking from it is very positive. But I have also studied with distance learning. But, I've made sure that I've created those networks around me when I've been doing it as well. The other thing is, you can learn so much on the job. So, put yourself forward for projects, put yourself forward to do different pieces of work above and beyond your own job. Okay, you might need to put a bit more effort in, you might need to put some more time in, but you are learning through doing all those things. So that's the second. And then the third for me really is around networking and learning through others, learning through talking to other people, gaining from their experiences. So, I don't think there isn't an opportunity where you can't learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to close up, we've got I suppose it's a little bit more lighthearted. What defines you as a woman?
Oh, wow. What defines me as a woman? I think, what defines me as a human being, really, I suppose, is more plays to my values. Working in the NHS for quite a period of time, and in particular the ambulance service, was very grounding for me. It's about, how do you want to be remembered? And life can be taken away in a heartbeat. So what is important, and how are you going to get the most out of every single day? So for me, it's about being a human being. And what's the most important thing as a human being? Well, for me, it's to love and to be loved. That's the greatest thing that anyone can have in life. Beyond that, getting a bit profound here probably in my thinking, but I just want to be the best person I can be. And that's something that's you always got to be working at. I want to be the best person I can be as part of my family, best person I can be as a mother and a grandmother. And then beyond that, I am defined by what I want to leave in this world. What's my lasting legacy? I want to make a difference. I don't want to have just passed through. So it's important to me, and I'm very driven in the work environment by it wanting to be a role that makes a difference, whether that was in the NHS and healthcare and saving lives, or now at SUEZ, saving the planet, or around, my passions for well-being and for gender equality. Those are things that I think make putting the effort in and giving a day of your life to important, and make it valuable. At the end of every day, I do, before I go to sleep at night, think, have I got the most out of the day that I've had today? Have I made a difference?
Amazing. I love that. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We hope it gave you a little more insight into what it means to be a female leader today. For more content like this, please subscribe to the BTN website, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating conversation. Thanks.